Welcome back, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. My name is Jason. I will be your host on this CFL talk show, Hussey's Huddle. In this video, I give my reactions to Week 12 of the 2021 CFL season. Some blowouts this week, and we're going to just talk about what we can take away from these games. And I'm also going to talk a little bit about the firing of Marcel Desjardins as GM of the Ottawa REDBLACKS. But really quickly before we get started, if you want to support the show, the best way to do it is by hitting the like button and subscribing to Hussey's Huddle for more CFL content just like this. I greatly appreciate it. And with that said, let's just hop in here to the Week 12 of the 2021 CFL season that, like I said, had a bunch of blowouts this week. But I think that we can still take a little bit away from every game. Even the game that really was close, but Saskatchewan and Calgary, it was really just a last-minute touchdown that made it look closer than it actually was. But I think these were some huge victories for the teams that did come away on the right end of these blowouts this week. So starting with Toronto and Montreal on Friday night, Montreal comes away with a gigantic victory. They are now first place in the East Division. Who would have saw that coming 4 weeks ago? They go on a 4-game winning streak. Essentially, that 3rd and 20 heave from Vernon Adams to Eugene Lewis against Hamilton to take the lead late in that game has saved the Montreal Alouettes season. And honestly, they're right in the mix of things for that first season, though, East the rest of the season. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see if they can hold on to that because they have a really tough schedule coming up. They have Winnipeg a couple times. They play Saskatchewan this week. Going to be very interesting to see what they can do. But honestly, in this game, I thought it was more Toronto bad than Montreal good. Don't get me wrong. We'll talk about Montreal for a second just to start off here. But Montreal's defense has really impressed me the last few weeks. They've really improved that unit over the 2019 unit, especially up front in the front seven. Armando Sewell made a big difference. Nick Usher, guy on the edge. They take their fair share of unnecessary penalties, but honestly, they've looked extremely improved over the 2019 unit, and that's a big thing for this team because this has often been, in the last couple of years, a very offensive-leaning team that when that offense sputters out, they lack success. So we're going to have to see if they can continue this great defensive effort we've seen the last couple of weeks against Toronto and Ottawa, and we'll see if that translates against the Western teams, Saskatchewan and Winnipeg, the last few weeks here this season. But for Toronto, it was just a mistake-filled game. And you got to think of this as a blown opportunity for the Argonauts because if they had won that game, they're in great, great, great shape to win the East this season because they would have been 7-3 with BC coming to town after getting whooped by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. We'll talk about that in a second. But they lose this game, and now they actually lose the tiebreaker with Montreal, I believe, because of the point differential. They split the season series, but I think they won that game. Montreal won that game by more points than Toronto won the previous matchup. So we'll see how that goes the rest of the season if that tiebreaker comes into play. But not only that, now they run the risk of having that game against Hamilton later on this season. I think it's the second last week of the season, really coming into play as a really crucial matchup for not just first place in the East, but potentially for the second place in the East if Montreal continues their hot streak the rest of the season. So I thought it was just a mistake-filled game for Toronto. A lot of interceptions by McLeod Bethel-Thompson, who really had his comeback-to-earth kind of game. I thought we could have seen that from Matthew Schultz, the Montreal Alouettes quarterback, but we didn't. We saw it from McLeod Bethel-Thompson instead. And this has kind of been the game that he's been prone to throughout his CFL career. And ironically, I think I jinxed him because in last week's video, I was saying that one of the great things he's been doing this year is taking care of the ball. And this was one of the worst performances he's had in a long time in the CFL level. And just really, really poor decisions. And then the defensive backroom, blatant blown coverages throughout this game were the sources of a lot of these big plays for Montreal. I think there was a big, huge play to Keon Julian Grant. It might not have been him, but there was a couple plays where guys were just wide open in the middle of the field, and you just can't have that if you want to be a complete football team. And I think it was just a blown opportunity for Toronto, and I'm just really interested to see how they respond to that going forward. But again, huge win for Montreal, who puts them right in the thick of things. Even with the injury to Vernon Adams, Matthew Shields has looked pretty good, and we're going to have to see if that continues going forward. And then the second game, Ottawa and Hamilton on Saturday, the triple header. Hamilton wins 32-3 here. We'll start with them. Huge win for them. Obviously, this was a must-win situation. They could not have fallen to 4-6, losing 3 straight at home. They were able to avoid that. And Jeremiah Masoli finally gets off the schneid after losing his first 4 starts of the season, albeit the last 2 in just heartbreaking scenarios to Toronto and Montreal. But he finally gets a win here. He looked great. I think it was 25 of 28 on the day. Just a great all-around performance from him. For Hamilton, the defense looked great. I mean, albeit against Ottawa, and Ottawa, we'll talk about them in a second. It's just really been just another one of those years for them. But Hamilton, I think a big thing coming out of this game is that Brandon Banks, even though he did not have his best day, he had a clear drop touchdown that it was just like the stadium just sunk. When I was there at Tim Hortons Field, the energy in the stadium just sunk when this guy dropped a wide open touchdown pass from Dane Evans in this game. Even though he dropped that touchdown pass, he actually had one of his better games of the season, and I think it's baby steps at this point because clearly he hasn't been himself this year, Brandon Banks, after his MOP 2019 season. And I think he just really needs to stay healthy for multiple games in a row, get into a rhythm with Jeremiah Masoli. And again, I thought this was one of his better days, and they're going to really need him down the stretch now with the injury to Braylon Addison, which we don't know the severity of. He kind of pulled his hamstring on a big, huge 60-plus yard reception in this game, and he was looking great prior to his injury when he came back here. And I'm really interested to see if he can recover and be ready for the playoffs this year. I don't think it's going to be one of those 1 or 2 week injuries. I think it's more like a 2, 3, 4 week injury. So I mean, we're going to have to see how long he's going to be out because he's a crucial part of this Hamilton offense. And clearly that Jeremiah Masoli plays better while he's in there. But huge win for Hamilton. They really, really needed this. And they go to Edmonton next week. So another winnable game for the Tigercats. They need to take advantage. And that's really the mindset going forward. If they can capitalize on that, they'll be 6-5 and right in the thick of things for a home playoff game. And then for Ottawa, where do you start, honestly? I mean, the score really says it all, and the fact that Marcel Desjardins, their GM, fired after the game. Here's the thing with this situation is that the Red Blacks were awful in 2019, right? And this was a result of a horrible 2018 offseason where they essentially let a lot of their key offensive pieces go. You think of guys like William Powell, Trevor Harris, Greg Ellingson, and Sir Vincent Rogers. Those really core guys to their success dating back to the 2018 Grey Cup. They let them all go. And then the 2019 season comes around, and obviously they go on just an epic losing streak. I think it was, they started 2-0, and then they lost 15 of their last 16 games of the season, which is just mind-blowing, to be honest. And a lot of it had to do with quarterback play. A lot of it had to do about the offensive pieces. But, I mean, I think it was just an overall roster deficiency standpoint that caused the Red Blacks' struggles that season. But in 2021, they fire Rick Campbell, obviously the head coach, after 2019. They give Marcel Desjardins, the GM, another year with a different head coach. He's been the only GM the Red Blacks have ever had, by the way, since 2014 when they came back into the CFL. And so this guy's won a Grey Cup before, and, they gave him the benefit of the doubt. But the thing is, this year, exact same thing here. He didn't really make a great effort to improve this roster. A lot of people, including myself, were very critical of the Red Blacks offseason and the moves and the talent that they brought in, or lack thereof, I really should say. And these are the results of that. And Marcel Desjardins, honestly, he kind of deserved to lose his job here. And I'm not saying the coach is Paul LaPolice. I don't think he's been outstanding. I don't think he had a good day against Hamilton. But it was just a really deserved firing, I think, for Marcel Desjardins, because he just hasn't done enough to improve this roster over the last few years. And for a team to fall so far from Grey Cup appearance in 2018 and being a very stable franchise, frankly, to what they are today, it's just been very disappointing for the Red Blacks. And I think it's really started time to start fresh. And I don't know what they're going to do at the head coach position. And obviously, fixing that quarterback situation is going to be very key going forward. But I don't know. Let's see what Duck Hodges has the rest of the year, I guess. But honestly, I don't know what they do going forward. Let's just evaluate the rest of the year, and we'll see what happens with the Red Blacks going forward. And then BC and Winnipeg, and another laugher. I think it was 45-0 for Winnipeg in this game. And Winnipeg, congratulations. You are going to be hosting the Western Final, I think for the first time in a very long time, I believe. And they're just having an epic season. They're just dominating every opponent. There's just such a gap between them and the second best team right now, on paper right now in the CFL. Just a great season for them. They're just dominating on both sides of the ball. Willie Jefferson is just a freak, man. Like, that interception was just amazing. Interception return for a touchdown, and then he has the audacity to come back while he's running towards the end zone. High five Brandon Alexander, who made a great play to get off the edge and force that ball into the hands of Willie Jefferson on that play. And oh man, what a play for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers that was. But BC, what do you say about them either? Like, they've just completely fallen apart after a great start to the season. And honestly, it's kind of looking like their start to the season was really fueled by their 2 wins versus the Ottawa REDBLACKS. They did have a good win against Montreal earlier this season, and then the other win came against Calgary when Bo Levi Mitchell threw 5 interceptions. So, I mean, the wins that they've had this year haven't been all that impressive, and now that the quality of opponent has got harder as the season's gone on, they've really struggled, especially in the trenches, where it looked like they were a much improved team over 2019 when the season started getting along in the first 5 or so games. But honestly, as the season gone on, the offensive line looks pretty awful. Joe Figueroa, their longtime left tackle, has not looked good, just like he did in 2019. This is a guy that's been an all-star in the past, and I thought maybe we'll see a huge bounce back from him this year. He was getting toasted all day in this game. I mean, Suk Chung at right guard hasn't been an impact player that they thought they were going to get when they signed him in 2019 free agency. And I think those are the roots of the BC Lions problem. I think they have the skill players. I've always said they've had the skill players to succeed. But honestly, I think the fact that this game is about blocking and tackling a lot of the time, BC just doesn't have a lot of great players at doing that. They're just not a very physical football team, and that's really where a lot of their troubles lie. And honestly, they still have a chance to turn it around the rest of the season, but it's going to be tough. They go to Toronto and then to Hamilton the next 2 weeks, so they got to win at least one of those games, you think, to have a chance to make the playoffs here. But I mean, again, I don't like their chances in doing so at this point. And then the last game of the week between Saskatchewan and Calgary, I think this was a huge game for Saskatchewan's confidence. I mean, this was not necessarily a must-win game because BC was not really a threat to pass them in the standings right now. But this game is a potential preview of the Western semifinal. In fact, I think it's very likely that this is going to be the Western semifinal. And the fact that they won gives them a good chance of hosting that final. I mean, they really got to win a lot of their games, and they still have that tiebreaker. They still don't have that tiebreaker with Calgary because Calgary won 2 of the 3 matchups. But if they can secure home field in this playoff game, I think it could be huge for them. And these two teams are just really close. And I think, honestly, the big difference in this game, obviously, was the turnovers by Bo Levi Mitchell, which has really been the story for him all year. I mean, I've kind of jinxed him the last couple of weeks, kind of saying that he's starting to get better, he's starting to play a little bit better, and then he comes back to earth with this game. I mean, he had a horrible interception on a flea flicker attempt play, and then, I mean, sometimes Bo just needs to learn how to throw the ball away. And again, who knows how healthy this guy is? The whole year, I think he's just battled injuries. The last few years, I should say, he's really battled injuries. But he cannot turn the ball over like he's been doing because this team around him is pretty talented. It has its holes, and it doesn't have, a lot of these superstar players. at least on the offensive side, like they have had in years past. But they have the capability to compete, and I think they really need to ride Kadeem Carey more in the backfield, who's having a great season, but he doesn't really receive a lot of carries in the backfield, to be honest, for a guy that has produced the way he has. I think he's probably been their best offensive player this year on offense. I mean, because you can't say it's been Bo Levi Mitchell, because he's been arguably one of the worst quarterbacks in the league this year. I would still take him almost over any quarterback in a one-game scenario, but it hasn't been a good year for Bo. And Calgary, it's not the end of the world after losing this game, but I think with Ottawa coming next week, they really need that really solid offensive performance, and I'm really looking forward to that game and seeing how Calgary responds, because going to 5-6 now, they really need to even up their record and avoid falling into this crossover territory, because they could still lose the tiebreaker to BC. They still have a big matchup coming up with them, so they really need to take advantage of the games that are very winnable for them. And I'm really interested to see if they can do that going forward. But again, for Saskatchewan, huge win. They were able to incorporate Duke Williams and Shaq Evans into the lineup at receiver. I mean, not huge plays from those guys all around, but honestly, just big to get them into the lineup, and I think that's only going to get better as the weeks go on. But with that said, those are my reactions to Week 12 of the 2021 season, as well as some discussion about Ottawa REDBLACKS former GM Marcel Desjardins. Be sure to let me know about your thoughts in the comment section. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.